Started an exciting conversation. So let me introduce our special guest for this afternoon, Sarah Daniels. So Sarah is a former bookseller who studied archaeology and now lives in rural Lincolnshire, UK. Her work has been published in various online magazines and has been nominated for Best British and Irish Flash Fiction. So again, thank you so much, Sarah, again, for joining us this afternoon.
No, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be back after 2 years from the first book, and you were my first event in the US when that was published. So it's really nice to be back again.
Yes, and it's excited to talk to you again because I absolutely love The Stranded, and I'm happy to say that when we were giving away free copies of The Stranded, people kept coming up to me. It's like, "Where's the second book? Where's the second book?" I was like, "Well, it's in the UK. It hasn't published yet." But we're happy to say it has arrived. It is coming.
Yeah, I had a lot of that as well. I was like, I'm so sorry. Please just wait a little bit longer. But yeah, it's arrived. I'm so excited that it's out. And I love the new cover, and I love the new title, and yeah, it's yeah, I hope everybody loves it as well.
Well, I certainly did.
Thank you.
I was so engrossed. I was like, "Oh my God, what's happening? What's going to happen?" It's an amazing book. And even though it hasn't made the best books of 2024 in NYPL, it's one of my best books of the year. So,
thank you.
So without giving too much away, and I know it's hard, could you give us a brief synopsis of The Only Way Out?
Oh, I'm gonna try. So
yes, I know
it's really hard because The Stranded, this book, which is my debut, it is set aboard a derelict cruise ship, and it follows these teens who are trying to escape, and each of these teens has a different kind of plan on how they're going to get away from this ship that they've been brought up on. Everybody's been stranded for the past 40 years. And the way that I set up The Stranded was that not all of them could succeed in like achieving their goals, basically, to get off this ship. And I think it's fair to say that it's safe to say they get off the ship, but it's not exactly how any of them planned. And they had a kind of hopeful this desire to get off the ship. They were going to have a new life, and none of that happened. In The Only Way Out, or The Exiled, they're like half a continent away from each other, and they are just trying to pick up the pieces in the second book. Esther, who's one of the main characters, is trapped in what's essentially a refugee camp, and she is trying to do anything that she can to help the people that are around her. And in contrast, Nick he's half a continent away. He's doing his own thing. He's desperately trying to kind of get away from the life that fate dealt him, and he just wants nothing to do with the rebellion. He just wants to recover. He wants his own life, and he wants to build something for himself. So yeah, without giving too much away, that's kind of all I can say. Yeah.
No, that's great, because there is so much that happens in The Only Way Out. We only like find out what happens like with Esther and Nick, and their like will they or won't they kind of relationship. And then also we have new characters. We have Janik and Meg, who Janik is very interesting, and yeah, a horrible person, but very interesting.
Yeah.
And but yeah, we're introduced into more into this into the world of, I like to say, the Arcadia, even though it's more than the Arcadia, because you have the United States of America and then the Federated States,
Mm-hmm.
and there's just like, and also the ships, which the thing I miss from the US edition, because I do have the UK edition, I like the map that was in line in the book, because I was like, oh wait, I'm confused about this. I could just go to the map and have an idea in my
Yeah,
head, like what
yeah.
is being described there. So I kind of wish that was in the US edition.
I haven't seen the US version yet. I'm still waiting, but the postie is so like, he's just laden down with parcels every day. I'm waiting for my books from the US, but I don't know if they're going to arrive anytime soon. But yeah, no, I totally agree. That map, the UK publisher said, do you have a map? Like, do you have an idea of where? And I was like, yeah, of course I do. So I kind of sketched it out, not expecting that they would put it in the book. Oh,
You just thought there was like a random questions like, do you have a map? Let's just.
no, but I'm not an illustrator, I can't draw. I'm like at stickman level of drawing.
So wait, is that your actual like drawing, or did like an illustrator like perfect it a little bit, or they just
they took it and they did the fonts and stuff.
Okay.
But yeah,
I
got it up on Google Maps and I like drew around it.
Hey, you did better than I would. If you told me that it was an illustrator who did it, I was like, sure. Now you're telling me it's you. Now
no, yeah, they definitely beautified it. Yeah.
You can add.
And I was like, and they also had these really like detailed questions about US geography, and I was like, I don't know. It sounded right. So yeah, I wouldn't trust the accuracy of it, but the vibe is there.
Well, no, I definitely get that. I mean, you probably know way more than a lot of people who study US geography. So
yeah, I did get the fear for a while that like it would be released in the US and people would just come for me and I'd be like, no, I'm really sorry, I don't understand US geography.
No, but I really did like, because how it was drawn is like it puts an X through all, like, don't want to get too much. Yeah.
No, that wasn't my idea. That was the illustrator. So, and when I saw it, I was like, oh yes, that was really good. Yeah. Which is a really nice thing about writing books, is seeing the way that other people kind of feed into it. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Yeah, because it gave you like a sense of what was going on, like the severity of the issue that was happening in the book.
Mm-hmm.
And it just really like put a picture to it. It's like, okay, this is what's really happening. And it could have, because like it could have been like, maybe it was Janek's map or something like that. It's like, it's just like putting that in your in kind of your creative mind. So there's just like a lot of going on. But I did, even though now that it is complete, the duology is complete, did you ever, when you were initially writing, and I probably did ask you this the first time around, but did you initially wanted to write it as a duology, or did you like think after the ending of The Stranded, you were like, there's still more to tell in the story that I have to get out? Or did someone like ask you like, oh, can you write a sequel to what happened to after it?
No, I think this is one of the sad things about being in the publishing industry is that the longer the further it gets from publication, the more ideas I have for these new books. So the duology element was it's just literally what, duologies are fashionable. People want duologies at the moment. That's what's going to sell. So I wrote the first book and it took me 10 years to write this first book. And it got to the cliffhanger, and I really didn't have any idea what was going to happen next. And my agent said, let's pitch it as a duology. You know, that's what's going to do well at the moment. And it did, and that's what the publisher wanted. And then I was going into the second book, and I didn't really know what happened. And it had to be written in 6 months instead of 10 years. And I had all these expectations, and people wanted specific things to happen to these characters, and it was a completely different experience. And I got to the end of it, and I was like, oh, okay, that feels completed. Feels finished. But then I have these other ideas of the things that I'd want to write in this world. And so I'd really like to write something from Alex's point of view. And if you haven't read the first book, Alex is, I don't know how to, it's like a lovers to enemies situation, and he's not a point of view character, so I don't even know myself what was going through his head when he was doing the horrible things that he was doing. So I would kind of like to write that. And then the other thing I would quite like to write is that I want to write Nick and May's love story, or just like snippets of them. I kind of had this idea that maybe before everything goes really bad, they get one Christmas story, you know, and it would be a short story, and it'd be fun, and it would be nice, and it would just be like something that they have together before their world gets completely obliterated. So yeah, there are other things. I don't know whether they would ever get released, or whether it would just be me sending it to you.
I would happily read.
Thank you.
But that was one of my questions, because I feel like there's so much still, even after the conclusion of The Only Way Out in both of these books, I feel like there's still more stories to tell. And I did want to ask you, like, are you willing to go back to this world and write more stories? Because we see a lot, like, for example, like the Hunger Games, like we thought it was over, and now it seems like Suzanne Collins is writing more stories with it. Yeah. So I didn't know if, like, did you think like, no, I've said all I need to say, or you feel like you want to just like go back or go a few years forward? I wanted to know that.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I could go backwards, and there will be so many stories to tell on this ship. And I think a lot of the feedback that I've got from readers is that they want to know what happened before. They want to know what happened in Europe. You know, the reason for people being on this ship in the first place. So there are so many stories that we could tell about this ship. I think it depends a lot on the publishing industry, and you know, I think actually no, it doesn't depend on the publishing industry. I'm quite happy to write these stories and self-publish them, and you know, and put them out for the readers who enjoy this world to read. So maybe I will just write some. You know, maybe we should, you know, democratize the publishing industry a bit and say, I've written this story. Here it is. It's part of this world.
Yeah, because we see that a lot with fan fiction.
Mm-hmm.
And then like people taking it on their own to continue writing something of a world that they love. Is like seeing like, oh, well, this is my interpretation of it, and people still read it and they lap it up. And yeah, I think it's a shame that like but I do understand like writers have to wait for like, oh, if like a publisher has to like pick it up. But sometimes we can, that's how books started off. It wasn't like a big publishing industry. It's just like, you know, passing it along to one person after another, and that's how the book travels. So I think if we go back to that way, I think it would just create more readers and create more interest into the story. So
I think you're totally right. And the thing that has kind of surprised me about my enjoyment of being in the industry is that it's not like the reviews necessarily. It's when people kind of bring their own interpretations to my work that really like brings out the emotions in me. So like the first time that I heard somebody reading out my book, it's like, that's amazing. Like they just the cadence of the words and their voices performing this and like their interpretation. And the same happened when I commissioned some artwork, and I was just like, I hadn't I hadn't seen these characters in this way. So it was just a really nice feeling to have somebody else input as well. So yeah, I definitely agree. I love fanfic, and I think I think it should definitely be part of the whole industry, like the whole corpus of things that we do should be to bring other people's experiences of this work into the fore and like maybe disseminate it in some way. I don't know. This isn't going to make any money, but but it would be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but I think it's like, but it may not make money, but it's like creativity at its best. And if it just brings, because I feel like in the world we currently live in, like we can use like a little bit, like, you know, something that like an outlook for our like outlook for stress, or just a stress relief, and just creating that like artwork, or either if it's like art or writing, if it's something creating in that way, and if it's just a good outlet for that, I say go for it. Because I mean, yes, it would be great if we could make money off of everything that we love. Trust me, I would love to make money off reading books for a living, but that's
perfect.
I know, it's perfect. A librarian to another library, like we would love doing that. But yeah, I think if we give like some like to these type of series, and you see like with other best-selling series, like that's how people do it. They create different interpretations of the work and put their own say into it. And I think if we encourage that kind of outlook for creativity, then I think it can go. It can go definitely a long way.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
it would be. But to going back to The Only Way Out. So with The Stranded, it's a little. You do have multiple point of views, but there for The Only Way Out, there's more. There's two new characters, and we have Janek and Meg. And I did want to ask, like, how was it like writing the different POVs? Like, how were you able to get into the mind of Esther, of Nick, then jump to Janek, and then Meg? Because they each had their own individual voice and personality, which I really loved. Like when reading it, it's like I didn't sense any kind of similarity. They were all different, and they were all very unique. So how were you able to like jump from one POV to another?
I cheat. Honestly, I cheat. So I can't see these people. I can't see them at all. I don't know why. I can't see their faces. I don't know really what they look like. I write what they look like. But each one of them has a voice of somebody that I know or that I've interacted with. It doesn't have to be loads. I'm kind of eyeing up your voice as a character for one of my future books. But I steal their voice and I just imagine what they sound like. And once that voice clicks in, it's just there. I literally hear them in my head, and I can figure out exactly how they would say a particular phrase, or what kind of joke they would make in that scenario. So yeah, it's a big cheat on my part. But I mean, it also makes it more difficult because there are times when I just don't hear them at all. And then I have to go like scrolling through audiobooks to find this perfect voice for this particular character. so yeah, it's a kind of a two-sided coin. It benefits me and it doesn't benefit me in the same way. So yeah, but I love writing multiple points of view. I think I like to see situations from different perspectives, and so yeah, I quite enjoyed exploring this camp kind of from the perspective of somebody that was trapped there, and also from the perspective of somebody who was there for these like nefarious reasons, without giving any spoilers away.
I like how it's like you were ashamed to say I cheat, but it doesn't sound like cheating to me. I mean, that sounded like a very innovative way to what no, because it's like
Yeah.
it's like you're taking what you hear every day and you're incorporating it into your writing. And I feel like
Yeah.
that's what a lot of writers do. They just notice things and then they somehow connect it to what they're writing a little bit or inspires them to write. So I don't consider it to be cheating.
No, but I really loved writing Pat because he's Liverpudlian, Chinese and Irish, and I know somebody like I went to university in Liverpool, so I know this voice, like, and it's such a kind of complicated mix, but I know exactly how they speak and how they would kind of pass certain phrases, and what they're going to say that's sarcasm and what they're going to say that's kind of sincere. So yeah, it's and when it hits, when I get that voice and it clicks in my brain, I'm like, okay, we can write.
Would you say he was your favorite character to write, or would you say like Esther or Nick?
I don't know. I feel like I enjoy writing them all in different ways. So like Esther's me, like definitely. Like I am the really unexciting kind of goody two shoes librarian, gets good grades. Like, no offense to librarians, I'm a librarian. It's fine. And then Nick's like the sassy thing, and like that's where I get to say the things that I think about 2 days later. You know, that response that should have come out but didn't. And I figure it out later. And then Meg, oh, she was just sad. I and and her story wasn't always her story. It wasn't my choice to have her end in the way, like her story end in the way that it ended. And in fact, with this book, it kind of, I think because it was quite a short time span when I was writing it, it only took 6 months or something from kind of the end of The Stranded to get this full book finished, and which was completely out of character because it had taken me 10 years to get to this point. And my editor, who is brilliant, and he was like, oh, I wonder if this could happen to this character. And I was just like, I don't want it to. And with Alex, he was like, I think maybe we need a different ending for Alex. And I'm like, but I don't want it to, I want more suffering. And then also with the romance, that was a hard thing for me to write because I'm quite English in, like, I know there are English romance writers and like spice writers, but I'm quite it's like an opening up of yourself to write spice. And he was like, I think we can handle a bit more heat in this. And I was like, oh no, I don't think I've got it in me. But anyway, there is more heat. And there's definitely some romance in the second book. Although I'm not entirely sure you can call it romance under the circumstances, but there are relationships, like a melting pot of relationships and confusion and complications in the second book that weren't quite there in the first book.
I think it's, and I'm, because I have friends who love romance and they tell me all these trope names all the time. I think it's like a slow burn romance because it's like that tension and you're not there yet. You're not like opening it up, but you can sense the tension, but it's not public. So yeah,
and I'm glad that I had 2 books to explore this. But that does bring me to my favorite. Sorry to skip ahead in your interview. My favorite part of this book, which was when they're up on the building, and they realize that they're facing life and death, and they have to say it now, or it's not going to get said. And I think that was my favorite part.
There's so many. Yeah, that is one of my favorite parts too.
Oh, okay.
It's just a good sense. It's like it's there. And then like also another favorite part is like when Nick, he thinks he sees Esther, but it's not, because he runs to her. It's like, oh my God, you're fine. And then when they turn the digiface screen, it's not. He's
yeah.
Like,
So there's somebody in disguise.
Yes.
And yeah, he lets himself go a little bit because he thinks that he's talking to Esther, and yeah.
Oh, I know.
And I love Enid. Also, Enid's like my way to be sassy and say the like trash talk that I would love to say in real life, but don't actually get round to saying, because I'm a bumbling English woman.
No, I think it's like with like you have those like strong characters, like, oh, that's who I want to be, but then you're like, no, I'm more like this one. And like he's like, I want to be Enid, and Esther. Yeah. And also sometimes Nick, especially with the trauma he had to deal with, I would definitely be Nick. It's like, no, I'm done with this. Cut me out.
I know, yeah. I think that's how we all feel a lot of the time. We're just like, no, that is not, no. We've got life to get on with. We're not going to deal with all of this rebellion, but then we have to.
Yeah, exactly. And so back to, and I definitely wanted to ask you this question, because I remember seeing a lot of this on social media about how there are not a lot of. So there was a report recently how like teenagers are not reading as much as they used to in the past. There's like a very low dip, and then there was a lot of talk like that YA books lately have not been showing characters, like teens are not being able to see themselves in the characters, and especially teenage boys. But what I like about this series and other books is that you are able to, even though one is a female character and one is a male character, regardless, it's a book that can be read by any gender. So I wanted to ask, like, what advice would you give, like, if there are writers out there who want to get into the young adult like genre, like, what would you advise, like, how would they create characters and stories that appeal to all genders?
Yeah, I think it's such a complicated topic, and obviously part of me is like, we can read books by people that we don't have a common identity with, and that's really, really important in terms of empathy and learning and, you know, understanding other people's experiences. So I definitely think that boys should be reading girls and girls should be reading boys, and at the same time we all need to be able to see people like ourselves in literature. So yeah, it's really complicated. I would say that I really like writing Nick, and I think he's a really great character, and he has. I like being in first person in Nick because it gives me the opportunity to think about maybe experiences that I've had, that I wouldn't have been able to react in the same way to. So I feel like his relationship and his kind of crushing on May and his feelings for Esther were probably like things that as a girl I would have been able to kind of wear on my sleeve a little bit more, and as a boy or a cis boy, he would have had to kind of he would have had to like moderate in terms of masculinity, if you see what I mean. So I think my advice would be to find the feeling and then figure out how things would have been different for you had you not been the same person, had you not been the same identity. And that's literally the only advice I can give, unfortunately. I do a lot of talking to, I've got a 13-year-old son, so I do a lot of talking to him about, he's not read my books. He's read all the other cool books. But I do a lot of talking to him and trying to figure out like what he's what challenges he has, and how he responds to certain feelings that he's having. So, it's just hard. I think that YA is hard anyway because there are so many feelings, there are so many emotions, and you're having to go from like childhood to adulthood, and nobody's telling you how to do it. You just got to figure it out yourself, and books are there to help you, and which is wonderful. So yeah, that was a lot of words for not really saying very much, but I think just trying to feel the experience yourself and then tweak it for how other people might be experiencing that same feeling is the key.
So one, I don't know if your son is listening, but this is a New York librarian telling you have to read your mom's books.
Thank you.
So that's why. He probably would be freaked out. It's like, ew, wait, my mom wrote this? Like, no, they're kissing. No, I can't do
that. Yeah. Not even like the peer pressure managed to, his friends have read it and loved it, but not even the peer pressure got him. So yeah.
Give him a couple more years. Probably just like out. It's like, I guess I better go and read it. Oh. But that's funny that his friends has read it, but he's still. But the second thing, no, you are absolutely right. I think getting into the emotion of I think it's like also trying to remember how you were as a teenager and how you how you have dealt with the situation is probably not matching it, but just interpreting it, and also and just trying to find a portrayal. But I do agree that it is a lot. I don't know how a lot of people do it, or even particularly writing young adult fiction, because reading it, there's not that many YA fiction that manages to capture the teenage experience so well, because there are a lot of authors that try so hard. I'm like, I feel like you're trying so hard. That's why I'm not engaging it with well. So there's authors like yourself who they capture it right on. I'm like, yes, this is great. This, you definitely have to read it because you will immensely enjoy it.
I mean, I think the other thing is that I am in my 40s and still don't really understand how the world works. It's a feeling that doesn't really go away. So if you can tap into that, that feeling of being slightly adrift, not entirely understanding what's happening, and that also helps.
Oh no, definitely, because I'm also close to 40, and I'm still trying to figure. I still don't feel like a grown up. I'm like, I don't think I'm a grown up, even though I pay bills and stuff. I'm like, no, I'm not a grown up.
No, I'm like, who's in charge here?
The 13-year-old boy who doesn't want to.
Yeah.
So we briefly talked about this before we came on. It's like, what books you're currently reading. But I did want to ask you, like, what were your favorite books of 2024? Since it seems like 2024 just started yesterday, that we are coming to an end. Are there like books that you read this year that you consider like your favorites of 2024?
I do. I've brought some. So I have My Love Life and the Apocalypse.
I want to read that one. I've seen that.
Yeah. I love this, and she's an incredible writer, and she's an incredible person as well. So I would definitely recommend this. Also, my friend this is adult, Hear Him Calling,
Okay.
horrifying ghost story.
You had me a
Don't-
ghost story.
no,
I'm writing
yeah,
this.
no, set in the Welsh mountains. That's not one to read alone. And this isn't 2024, I don't think, but I read this.
I love Juno. Juno's awesome.
You know, at Yelk 2 years ago, I did a signing table, and I was next to Juno Dawson. I was simultaneously trying not to die from being a fangirl and like embarrassed by the fact that I didn't have a massive line.
It's fun.
I know, yeah, but I love this book. The whole series, like, just so much witchiness. It's great. So yeah, they're the things that I've been reading recently.
No, I do. I've heard so many great things. I've read Juno Dawson before. I've heard so many great things of that series. When I was at Yelk, I bought the prequel, Queen Bee, and
I haven't read it yet.
I've heard good things about that. Yeah, and I got her to sign it, and I met her at ALA in Chicago, and she was telling me that she got stuck in some weird ass town. And she's like, "This is weird. Like, the U.S. is very weird. Like, there's some very frightening towns." Like, yeah, I know. Yeah, I know.
Well, I'm glad that Juno Dawson doesn't always have it, like, not always nailing it either. That's good.
No, yeah. She doesn't. She's awesome. So I hope this is like a very happy info to the next question I have. Do you have any upcoming projects that you are allowed to tell us about?
Well, I can tell you anything, that's fine. So I wrote another kind of near future duology, which didn't get published, unfortunately. So the market was not keen on near future like sci-fi stuff. I still believe completely in this story, and maybe one day it will appear. It was like a near future parallel worlds type sci-fi where one version of London was rewilded and really cool, and then another version was not rewilded and was kind of attacking the rewilded utopia type thing. It was really good, but it's the publishing industry, it doesn't always work out. So then I flipped and I wrote an adult thriller. Before I was an author and a librarian, I was an archaeologist. Excuse me. So I wrote a thriller based on an osteoarchaeologist who finds a fresh body in an archaeological site. And that is kind of with my agent. We're just going through final edits, and hopefully that will be going on submission soon. But I'm kind of getting like a witchy YA. Excuse me. I'm getting a witchy YA kind of feeling. I live near somewhere called Beaver Castle now. And a few hundred years ago, they had this case where the people that lived in the castle were murdered by witches. And these witches kind of got caught and were put on trial. And so I think I might do something around that just for fun. Like, yeah, I think I'm going to go back to writing things that I just want to write for fun and see what happens.
I so the the first book you were describing, The Mirror World. I'm sad. I would love to read that because I've seen like a lot of Mirror Worlds stories, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But that sounds very interesting. How
Mm-hmm.
like how you describe it. So hopefully, fingers crossed, one day.
Maybe one day.
Yeah. The archaeology thriller. I have a coworker who loves archaeology and mystery, so we will definitely have if it gets published and it gets published in the US. We definitely want to have you back to talk about like a she loves archaeology thrillers. Um, but yeah, the witchcraft thing. I have always been fascinated with witchcraft, especially like for the US, like the Salem witch trials. I visited Salem. Always fascinated with that, and I'm trying to learn more about the witch trials that happen in the UK because I think a lot of people forget that they also happen there as
Mm-hmm.
well, the persecution. So I'm all for that. I love which craft historical. That's why I want to read Juno Dawson's series. I'm like, yes, this is
Yeah,
right up my alley.
yeah, which is good. And near to our house is the only church that has a burial in it. Like you can go and see the crypt, and it has this burial of the only person that was ever killed by witchcraft, like officially killed by witchcraft in the entire country. So yeah, it's just creepy. The whole place is creepy. I'm not from here, and I'm in like this constant kind of Poe-ish, like it's foggy and creepy the entire time. So I think that's, yeah, I definitely think I need to get into the witchy Juno Dawson like thing.
Because I think like witches are it was a thing, then it disappeared, and now it's starting to come back again. And I'm like, well, it was always a thing. It's just like people it
Hang on,
just
though. Are we going back into vampires? This is what I want to know. I feel like it might be happening.
no, it will because we have the resurgence of the Interview with a Vampire, the new series, and a
Although
lot.
that is really good.
Yeah, it is really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have that, and I think because I've read a vampire sapphic love mystery YA thriller. So that's also a duology, and that's also published by Source Books. This Ravenous Fate.
Oh, I'm gonna write it down.
Yeah, really, really good.
Because there was also this V.E. Schwab
Mm-hmm.
series on Netflix that was really good, and then they cancelled it after one season. No.
Like Netflix.
Yeah, Netflix. It was called First Blood or First Kill or something, and it followed like teenage vampires when they got their first sapphic teenage vampires. So it was perfect, basically.
I think I remember that, and because I know there's like a petition going around to say because Prime canceled My Lady Jane, so there's like a petition going around to try to save that. It's like, guys, they're not. Read the books. Create your own fan fiction because they're not going to bring it back.
Oh,
Oh, I can't believe it's almost out of time.
I know. But I've had so much fun. Thank you for having me again.
Oh, thank you so much again for joining us, Sarah. So I do have one more question for you.
Mm-hmm.
So, as librarians, as you know it yourself, that we have to do what is called like a book talk or a commercial pitch to encourage patrons to check out the books. So we're going to ask you to not only do one, but two, because they're both here. Well, sorry, they're being hidden by my background. For The Stranded and The Only Way Out, for those who are watching now or going to be watching this recording later on, to check out the book available in our library. So whenever you're ready, you could do it for 1 minute. You can go ahead.
Okay, I'm gonna try. I remember this last time, and I think I babbled. But okay, the Stranded. I'll show you the Stranded. This is the UK version. The Stranded is set aboard a derelict cruise ship where people have been trapped for the past 40 years, and it follows Nick and Esther as they have very different plans to escape their floating prison. And the only way out it follows Nick and Esther when they get what they want, and things don't turn out exactly how they planned. They are a whole continent apart at the start of the book, and by the end of the book we get to see what kind of relationship they can have with each other when they're facing certain death. So it's really fast paced. I would read it if you like adventure stories.
Yay! That was great, as always. Now I'm gonna, this is happening. Okay. Hey, yes. So yes, you heard it here. The Only Way Out by Sarah Daniels, the sequel to The Stranded. So it is on order in the New York Public Library, but we do have a holding for it. So you can pre-order the copy, and I'm about to not pre-order, thinking of a bookshop. Put the book on hold at the library, and we have the catalog link into that entered into the chat. We only have the print copy as of right now, but probably in the coming weeks we'll have the ebook and the e-audiobook available in our digital catalog. But we do have the first book. You need to read the first book before reading the second book. The Stranded by Sarah Daniels. It is a wonderful adventure story. I highly recommend it. And this one is available in both print and in e-audiobook format.